We're also going to find the endpoint. And there are 3 types of questions we're going to do today. So to find distance using the distance formula is x1 minus x2 squared plus y1 minus y2 squared. If you look in books, you might see y2 minus y1 and x2 minus yx1, but I put them in order because some kids here are dyslexic, and at least you're used to everything being left to right, so you don't have to keep adjusting your brain to go back and forth, okay? So the first thing I do when I'm given 2 points is I name the first point x1, y1, and the second point x2, y2. And then I take those numbers and I put them in the formula. So we have distance equals square root, and x1 is 5, x2 is 8, plus y1 is 8, minus, and y2 is -2. And I just put them in the formula. In your calculator, you are going to key in exactly this without the radical. So just the 5 minus 8 squared using the parentheses, and x minus -2 squared. Just key that in. So now you find the square root of what you just got on the calculator. Then you don't make any mistakes. If you want to key in the radical from the beginning, you have to put in another set of parentheses right here, and then you can put it all under the hood. But if you don't do that, you're going to get the wrong answer, okay? So I tell people, put the guts of the hood in first, and then square root that number. That make sense? Yeah. If they give me a graph, I can actually use the Pythagorean theorem, which you've seen also, a squared plus b squared equals c squared. You've seen that before, right? And this always comes up on the SAT, so it's one to remember. Whenever you have a right triangle, you can say the 2 sides squared added together equals the hypotenuse squared, which is the long one, right? So believe it or not, that ugly formula we just looked at for distance is derived from this one here. It's just derived from it. But this is an easier way to do it. If you ever forget the distance formula, you can always graph your points and do it the way I'm about to teach you. Do you guys remember how to do it? You don't remember doing this?
I think I do. I was bad at it.
You were bad at it? I don't know about that. So here we're going to draw a triangle. What you do is you kind of find the place, if you go straight up and straight over, where you meet. And then you're going to count these boxes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So that side's a 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This side's a 6. Now let's say one of you is different than the rest of us and likes to do things a little bit different. And you drew your triangle this way. This is going to be 7 and this is going to be 6. It doesn't matter. You're going to get the same numbers, okay? So it doesn't matter which way you go, but you connect the dots. When you do that, you create a right triangle. You see it? So now you can say 7 squared plus 6 squared equals c squared. And that's 49 plus 36 equals c squared. 85 equals c squared. And how do I undo a square? How do I get rid of that square? What undoes the square?
You divide.
Not divide, it's the square root. Look at your calculators at the x square button. Everybody see the x squared button? Look above it. You see the square root? Those 2 numbers are put on that button because they each undo each other. Okay? So if I want to get rid of a square, I just square root both sides of the equation. Now the square and the square root cancel each other out, so that leaves me a c, and that's the square root of 85, which is 9 point something. Somebody tell me what it is. 9.21. That's what it rounds to? Rounds to 9.22. because there's a 9 here, that turns the 1 into a 2. Here we're finding the midpoint of the segment. So if I have a segment here, and here are my endpoints, I want to know what the coordinate is for the guy in the middle. That's what I'm looking for. Okay? Well, when I look at this, my formula for midpoint, and the word point is in midpoint, so my answer is going to be a point, like an XY point, okay? When I'm finding distance, my answer is going to be a number. What's the distance between James and I? It's about 10, 12 feet, right? That's a number. But when I find a midpoint on a graph, you're finding a coordinate of that graph, okay? So the formula is x1 plus x2 divided by 2 and y1 plus y2 divided by 2. What are you doing when you're adding two things together and dividing them by 2? Think of test grades. What are you finding? Like average. So the formula for midpoint, if you forget this, is average of the x's, comma, average of the y's. Everybody understand that? Here, what's 10 plus 3 divided by 2? That's going to be 6.5. So your midpoint is going to start, the x of the midpoint is going to be 6.5. Everybody get that? And negative 10 plus 2 divided by 2 is going to be negative 4. On these, they want you to find one of the endpoints if you're given the midpoint and one of the endpoints. So what they're giving you here would be the midpoint, right? They're giving you this guy and this guy. And you need to find this guy. Does everybody understand? When we have a formula, we have to put things where they go, okay? So this point here is x1 and y1. This point here is the x of the midpoint and the y of the midpoint. Everybody get that? And this I call the answer, because that's what we're looking for when we find midpoint. We find that middle guy. And this guy here is x2 and y2. Everybody understand that? Makes sense? The picture looks good? So, if they give me the endpoint, I'm going to name him x1 and y1. And the midpoint is the answer. So I'm going to name him x of the midpoint and y of the midpoint, the answer. And now I'm going to use the same formula I gave you, but the numbers need to go where they go. So we have x1 plus x2 over 2, comma, y1 plus y2 over 2 equals the midpoint. Who's the midpoint? So this is going to equal 7, 2. Got it? That means that x1 plus x2 divided by 2 equals the x of the midpoint, and y1 plus y2 divided by 2 equals the y of the midpoint. Okay? But they're asking me to find x2 and y2. So I leave them without, I don't know what they are. Do I know what x1 and y1 are? Yeah. So I put 7 plus x2 divided by 2 equals 7. And negative 9 plus y2 divided by 2 equals 2. Now this is a little bit uglier, and it just gets kids frustrated because the x2 is kind of in the middle of the mess, right? So what do you do first? You multiply both sides by 2 over here, and these 2's bite the dust, and you get 7 plus x2 equals 14. And how do I leave the x2 alone? Subtract 7.
Mm-hmm.
So x2 equals 7. So I know the 7 is the first point. Got it? Now I multiply this side by 2 and this side by 2. And these 2 bites the dust. Minus 9 plus y2 equals 4. y2 equals 13 when I add 9 to both sides. So if you were to graph 7, 13 and 7, negative 9, this guy here would be in the middle when you graphed it. It would be in the middle of the line. Okay? And you can have graph paper and check it and look.